So with that, I'll open the floor to questions.
Let's come up to the podium, if you would, for your question right here.
Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay.
The question was, why now? Every year you go to training camp, and the one unique thing about our job is it's entirely different than your summer. And I don't know if it was a year earlier, maybe, depending on when Drew retired. Look, he and I never discussed when his last game would be or when I'd be finished. I just felt like this season it was challenging for everyone. But man, I felt like it was time. I felt like it was time. I kind of knew maybe heading into training camp this might, but you don't share that with anyone. You think, well, let's see how the season goes, and we're working hard, and I felt the time was right for me. I felt the time was right, and it's something that I've been thinking about. I think that, look, you have close friends in the industry. I've lost a few close friends in this industry in the last 2 or 3 years. And also, forget football. There's other things, spending more time. There's a lot of sacrifices you make. And so not many get to choose their terms. And I looked at it as an opportunity also to see my kids more, to travel some more, to get in better shape. There's an attrition 2 a.m, and I know I hear people say, well, you don't have, yeah, I get it, but I need to. That's the way it works for me. And I think the attention to details are so important that it can be exhausting. And so I felt, as this season was winding down, that it was the right thing. And then the last week and a half, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And now, here's the thing. Our division. So we had won 4 divisions in a row and competed our tail off. Tampa Bay this year won the division, and congratulations. And yet, man, we battled against them. Atlanta and Carolina, they're working to get things going. And so I like the roster. Yeah, there's some challenges, but man, we played good defense this year. Man, our kicking game, Riz and Phil, were outstanding. Consistently in the top 5. And you see a lot of exciting football, but you also see a lot of bad football, and it's hard for the fan to see it. And there's a young group of offensive players. But it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that. It was a personal decision of feeling like, it's time. So it's sometimes hard to, but not with any regret. There's some excitement, like, all right, what next? And I honestly don't know what's next. Next question.
So have you felt that for a couple of years? Or did this
No. Look, you feel that way going to training camp every year. No, it's been the last season. No, it's been the last season. Now, the hard thing about this game, and you guys know this, the losses are always challenging, the work week, Monday, and there's a little bit of grit that defines players and coaches, and when you get the right group, you respond, We've had some challenging losses. We've had some great wins, and I've always loved how we've responded. I think I love when I hear people say, man, your guys play hard, they're tough, and those are important traits that hopefully, we're part of developing, but it still gets back to the players and the people. But no, I would say it's been more this season.
So how do you want to be remembered?
It's too early for that yet. I know this. the question is, how do I want to be remembered? And someone who had passion and someone that cared a lot, winning's important in that. It's important in that. I thought about my mom, if she were alive today. Two things. I wore this shirt because she always said you have to wear this color. It matches your eyes. She'd be in her 90s today. Her and my dad are both passed away. But they talk all the time about like leaving a place maybe better than when you got there to begin with. And I think we've done that. And it's not finished. We've got all these coaches that are sitting here with contracts, and Mickey and the leadership in place to continue that. But yeah, we're not writing an obituary today. It's a step. It's just another direction.
Along those lines, you say you don't want to call it a retirement, but does the team need to make a clean break? This isn't a maybe I'll come back next year situation.
No, Mike, that's hard to do any of that, right? I think in fairness to Dennis, who's a great candidate in the building, or any other coach that possibly would be hired, I think that there's no half in this game. You're jumping in the deep end and you're swimming. And if you elect to stay out, then that's fine. But I think that, I think that's the approach that I think has to be taken.
And I think you basically said this, but I don't want to put words.
Go ahead.
You're not going to consider coaching anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't, and look, they're going to be, I can't control, look, I felt like 10 years went by and we talked about the other team for a lot, and I get it, I understand it, but no, my plans are not to be coaching in 2022, and that's just how I feel.
Coach, you jog around the Superdome, high-fiving fans. You've been able to command them to raise their voices and cause problems for the other team. Those fans are watching probably from every corner of the globe right now. What is your message to Saints fans about the Lord?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be your head coach for 16 years. I appreciate each and every one of them. And so thank you for sticking with us in the good times and in the tough times. They've been outstanding. And so it's really that feeling of being grateful for having a chance to have been a part of this organization and coach for them. Thank you.
Sean, in the conversations you've had with people about this decision, were there any certain statements that really stuck with you or influenced you in any particular way?
No, look, when I talk to Skylene or when I talk to my children, this isn't something you can talk with 8 people about today. Even my siblings found out, So no, it was really back to trust your gut, and go with your gut. In other words, when does it end? Does it end when you get fired? I said at the beginning, I think it's easier to be fired, as difficult as that is. You thank everybody and they say, well, we wish him well, he made it. But when you choose to leave, I referenced, whether it's been Tony Dungy or whether it's been Bill Cowher or whether it's been, who are the more recent examples just in how to approach this. But yeah, it was a decision ultimately that sat with me, and I'm comfortable with it.
Sean, what are you most proud of, and what's your biggest regret?
All right, my biggest regret first, besides the Ninkovich debacle, would be the double reverse against Tampa Bay. We ran a double reverse against Tampa Bay in the 4-minute and lost the game. And Mickey brought me a study on Ambien and its in erratic behavior and mood swings with people. I've got a lot of regrets. You know, I mentioned one of them. I wish I would have done a better job early on in my career with the media, and hopefully I corrected that. But yeah, there are always going to be personnel regrets, decisions, but yeah, the double reverse, the Ninkovich decision, there's a lot. There are. It's easy to say you're most proud of a Super Bowl team, but I'm most proud of the culture in the winning seasons. Our first year here was 06. 07, we played in the Hall of Fame game in Canton. We played the Steelers. I believe it was their 50th. There was an anniversary for Pittsburgh. And so every once in a while as a coach, you get into one of these games you're not really sure about. And we had a player that we had just signed. I can't tell you his name, but he was on Pittsburgh's roster. And it was during training camp. So we're talking about a 90-man roster. It was a wide receiver. We go to Canton. We're playing the Steelers. And come to find out, he was cut because the Steelers had found out he had stolen some stuff from the locker room and from some good players there. And so during pregame warm-up for a preseason game, like I noticed the level of intensity is a little bit unusual for a pregame. And anyway, we played that game and got waxed. And we did a tour of the museum, the Hall of Fame. And aside from the Katrina exhibit, there wasn't a Hall of Fame player. Ricky was going to go in, I think, a year or two later. And so I talked to the players a little bit about culture. And now many of them weren't aware of the Steelers story, you know, with Chuck Noll and the years there that they were close. And then finally, you know, they get over the hump. And man, that time frame is shorter now for young coaches, for new coaches. But if you can, that you can build something that that will stay for a while. And so I would say, Larry, it would be how we're viewed today by anyone who's 21, 22 or younger is pretty cool, pretty good.
What are you going to miss most about coaching?
What will I miss most? I'll miss the people. There's a feeling when something happens in a game and you watch one of your players do something and grow that any teacher, I think, would tell you is awfully rewarding. Regardless of whether he's a starter, a backup, or a practice squad player, but to see them improve or get better and do something extraordinary, man, like that can fill you. So the relationships and then, you know, the teaching part of it.
How did this ending, if you will, compare to what you could have imagined or expected when you first arrived?
Impossible, right? I mean, impossible to predict. The question was, you know, how would I have envisioned the ending? Honestly, you don't even think about the ending. Like, you don't have time to think about, what if you don't have time to think about. So for the last, call it maybe week, I've thought about not the ending, but the presentation of the ending, like this. But I don't think when you're young and going fast and trying to build something, you're ever considering what it's going to be like. There's a motivation, a strong motivation when you discuss like fear of failure. That's I think a very real driving force.
Just from your time in the business leading up to then, you were open to the idea of 15 years.
I honestly had no idea about 15 years. You're just focused on just going and winning and getting more players and people that can help you win. And it doesn't seem like 15 seasons, honestly. It seems probably more like 11. And it's never, I always say this when I see the children of our coaches, when I see Dennis Allen's children or Pete Carmichael's children or CJ's children or Dan Dalrymple, that's what ages you. Because you remember, their ages when you first started. But you see those other people like the same way. You don't see the age, really, because you're around them so much.
Coach, talk about how tough this season was. How excruciating was it for the Bucs game to be sitting on that trophy, watching the game at home, to be
Listen, honestly, it wasn't excruciating because we were winning. It was exciting. I was just like you. Now, not you covering the game, but I was just like you, the fan. And you don't know how that game, you're playing a team that just won the Super Bowl. And you don't move your cup because it's in the right spot. You don't, all those things took place. And so that was a really good moment. It was a moment that I was so proud for our players and our coaches and everyone that was a part of that win. That was unique, obviously, but it was more just like a fan. There's not like there's communication early in the week relative to some early parts of the game plan, but man, those guys on our staff did a great job. Everyone jumped in and really picked up, the roles maybe were different a little bit. And, Ryan Nielsen almost got a bench foul for getting into a shouting match with Brady. But when you watch that game, you saw passion. And so, like I told our team, they won the division. They didn't beat us, so.
Sean, kind of brought up how the way you know how to do it is late in the night, early in the morning, that sort of thing. Did that become harder as your career progressed? And if you looked at any of your mentors, people like Gruden or Parcells, or guidance on that?
Yeah, the question relative to hours and workload, they were all different. The guys I worked with, Bill or John or any of these coaches, we kind of had a formula here. It varied depending on the game. Some weeks weren't as long. Part of it's me just wanting to go through it one more time. As a coach, though, you would always be interested in the off season when you're at the Combine or the Senior Bowl talking with your peers, other coaches, like, hey, what's your schedule like because we've been in, the last 5 years have been, ever changing relative to the off-season program. That's changed. And then look, with COVID, it's even changed more, right? So trying to always figure out the best schedule is something that you talk about to your staff. You talk about it like, hey, do we, you guys think we should be in pads today? Do we should be, that's something that you're always looking at.
How much did the
the season didn't weigh on me. Mickey knows this. I'll be honest with you, and I want this to sound the right way. So we've evacuated a couple times, right? We went to Indianapolis. And then I'd say we've had 3 warnings. And in all 3 events, I want to go. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is the perfect chance. Not talking about a crisis. But, you take a team and their family members and an organization to another city. There's a lot of work and money involved in that. This gets back to Mrs. B and Dennis. Will it help us? Yes. Here's why. And then someday a story on why we chose Jacksonville. And I think Jeff got a lot of it right. Those challenges are exciting. Because I've heard, look, and I'm not offended, but I've heard a lot of people say, man, he looked exhausted. And that was probably more he looked out of shape than exhausted. I'm not offended. I'm all right with that. I'm okay. But that gets back to Doug Miller's Zoom camera angle, honestly. And we miss Greg Benzel being here today. He's getting his gallbladder done. So I told Doug, I want a little elevation. I don't want any cameras that are just like staring at my neck from 2 feet away. The season wasn't exhausting. It was exciting. And us moving for 4 weeks was perfect. Obviously not for our city, but I'm just saying relative to building a team where training camps in the last couple of years are just different for obviously good reasons. And so here came this opportunity to develop a team culture and prepare for another season. And so, but this question you're asking, this topic, there's been so many more times where Mickey's like, and I'm like, no, let's do it. Let's definitely do this. And Mickey's like, it's a thunderstorm. I'm like, that's all right. We can go somewhere, or we can do something that heightens the level of awareness.
Sean, that would have been the overall concept, though, of burnout, stress in this profession. I mean, is
I understand that.
don't appreciate enough, maybe? Or?
Well, think about it, Mike. When does the question get asked? No one asked the fired coach if he was burnt out, right? You ask him, hey, how was your time here? What are you going to do next? What have you? And so we'll figure it out. Yeah, there's an element of, I don't know, burnout seems kind of, yeah, it's like the next challenge too sometimes. Like, what's next?
Was there one specific moment where you were like, okay, I need a break, or was it all encompassing?
What was the end of the question?
Or was it all encompassing?
Yeah, I don't think there was one moment. No, there wasn't a moment where it's like, holy cow. I mean, look, no one had fun the week we played Miami. No, that was what it was. And I understand it. But no, there wasn't that moment where you came back in and said, all right. There were moments that you felt like, man, I don't want to be grumpy about something, soured on something, but I'm pretty upbeat, and I would say raised by my mom in a way, and I say this, both my parents, but my mom was very optimistic, and I think those traits, I feel like I'm that way. And so there's times where, you get heated in the game, and, whether it's a player, coach, or anyone, you might have just but I don't really think about it the next day. So there was not that, this is it. I can't point to one. Well, I've only had a chance to talk with a few of them. It's kind of hard. Once again, it gets back to how do you do this? Do you have a team meeting and read about it all? Or do you have, and so I'll have a chance over the next couple of weeks to visit with a number of players. I saw Mike Thomas earlier. I saw DeMario. I just missed Cam. You know, but one by one, I'll have a chance to visit with these guys. It's difficult when everyone leaves after the season.
Sean, do you have any thoughts or opinions about what the organization should do next, or maybe what you'd like to see them do?
No. Look, Mickey and I have barely. I mean, we've shared time just discussing this, and with Miss Gale and Dennis, that'll all take place at the right time. Listen, I will always have a place and a part of me here, and I'm waiting to move into another residence, but those decisions will come with, hopefully, I just had a meeting with the staff and reflected on a number of things, and hopefully you make an impression like others before me made an impression with me that I don't even know it, but maybe that I'm passing on to future head coaches, future coordinators, future GMs, because I want every one of them to realize those dreams. Like I root for, Doug Marrone when he's being a head coach, and now at Alabama, and Curtis at Tulane, and Dennis at Oakland, and any of these people that were part of this process here, regardless of where they're at, you root for them. I do, and because you want to see them have success, and it's important to our program. And no different than our players. I think it's the hardest thing for a player sometimes when they end up on a different roster. Man, we're pulling for you. Like I'm pulling for Von Bell and Trey. Eli a little bit. Go ahead, Jeff. I look at the short term is nothing, but I'll have to go to the Super Bowl for some, a marketing commitment with Zebra, and that's great. They do a great job, and I enjoy working, with their technology and meeting with some people. I'd like to try TV. And I've had some opportunities, and yet I really don't. I talked to Drew a little bit about it last night. I don't know that part of it that well. But that'd be something that would interest me. And so I think the hardest part is sitting in your chair saying, wait a minute, you haven't talked with a network yet? You haven't talked with, not a word. So hopefully that opportunity comes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the unknown. I mean, all of us, we all get comfortable with certain things, right? We get comfortable in certain shoes. You don't know it until your better half tells you you're going to wear that again. And you realize that it's on like a 4-day rotation instead of, a 12-day rotation. We get comfortable in our jobs. We get comfortable in our relationships. We get comfortable. And every once in a while, and I think this probably plays a big part of it, it's you don't want to have a regret relative to another challenge or another. And so retirement, I don't think is the right word today.
Sean, can you remember the last time you didn't know what was next in your first step?
I went through that like year of trying to play after college, and friends are getting married, and other friends have health insurance, normal stuff. They're out of college, and I'm bouncing around from the Arena League to the CFL as a backup over in London. And your parents are like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "Well," and so I got hired. Steve Devine at San Diego State was in charge of graduate assistants. They had 4 then. I got hired over the phone. I flew from London to Chicago, Naperville, where I'm from. I had a Cavalier. It was an older car. I drove from Chicago to San Diego. I broke down in Denver. I didn't have enough money to have my car fixed, so he didn't fix it. The guy helped me out. And there would have been a trip where you're like, "Man, what are you doing? Like, this is what you're doing." And you have to. Like, that's pretty powerful. Like, you have to. You have to be successful. Like, whatever it is, you got to figure it out quick. And generally speaking, it's work hard, make a good impression. And so I'm sure, John, there's been other moments. There's been setback. Just talking with Dan Rochar, University of Illinois, we get fired as a staff, and where are we going? I think if you look at the path of a lot of coaches, there's that same adversity, maybe that also appears with players' paths. An injury or a setback, and this one's a little unique in that it's like you're choosing to go outside in the cold and do this. You're choosing to. So, but that's okay.
John, I've always been curious. After 18, was it harder to come back after disappointment in a way? That helped all?
What was 18? Oh, yeah, no, that was a hard way to end the season. No, but that was. No, I think we felt like in all of these years, they run together, Look, we've won more games in the last 5 years than any team in the NFL except the Chiefs. And I'm proud of that. And unless your name is Bill Belichick or Tom Brady, all of us are running after the next one and the next one. And Andy is wanting to get this next one. And Sean is wanting to get his first one. Kyle's wanting to get his first one. And it's challenging and difficult and chasing it, because here's the thing, and I think the hardest thing about the 18 season is you're a game away. You get more excited for the players and the coaches on your team that have never been, they don't understand. And I recall saying this a number of times. I don't know what you think it's like to be in a Super Bowl and win it. So picture that question posed to a player, or for that matter, anyone in here as part of the organization. And then I want you to times it by 100,000. That's how good it is. And it's like, really? 200,000. And even when you look back on those moments where in 2009 when the season ended, you're not ready to stop playing. Like, you're like, I don't want this to stop. And so the frustration later in your career is, you've watched something or done something and you can't wait to show your friend, like, what do you see this movie? And you really want to watch it again, almost more than they want to watch it for the first time. Or experience, like, where do you try this dish? And you're like, I don't want to try that. You're like, no, I'll eat it with you. That is the Super Bowl. And so that's one of the things that you look forward to doing is watching others' reactions. Like, wait till you see pregame warm-up. You're not going to feel your feet. And you're like, what? Yeah, those are the things I mean, Mike Westhoff, who's been in the league for however many years, this is going to be his first chance. That's what you want for the players, the coaches, and everyone new in the building that wasn't around for that. It's the journey part of it is the most amazing part.
Sean, come September, we turn the television in week 1 and things are shown. How strange will it be to see someone else running out the team?
So I haven't seen the schedule yet, so I don't know if it's week 1 at home or on the road. No, I think that'll be, yeah, it'll be different. It was different. Look, it was different in 2012 for sure. It was different for one game this year against Tampa, but that ended up being pretty good. And I think it'll be different. It'll be, yeah.
Sean, do you think this day wouldn't have been possible for you if you didn't have the one Super Bowl win? Do you think it'd be harder to step away if you hadn't gotten there?
I don't know that impacted today, Mike. It's a great question. You know, would this day be more difficult to step away had you not won a Super Bowl yet? But the problem is, like, one's not enough. It's not enough. And championship games and, you know, I called Mike Tomlin during the season. Mike Tomlin in week 5 became the 4th fastest coach to win his 150th game in the history of the NFL. And I knew like he was 3 weeks ahead of me, and it was bugging me. And he did it after 232 games, and like 4 weeks later, we do it. And I call him and I said, look, I got to the gas station and they told me you were already here. And it drove me crazy. So there are all these things that are competitively in you that you want to excel at. And that's why I get back to, and I say this with all due respect, and I mean that, when we got here, who's doing this better than anyone? And if you weren't studying New England, then you weren't paying attention. So anytime Bill would say or ask, would you like to practice? Yes. And then when you were practicing, you were kind of like, can we come in? Like, what do you mean? Can I look at your locker room? Can we look at your weight room? We want to learn. And I find it, look, I understand it's their job, but the whole discussion of, was it the chicken or the egg, Bill or Tom or Bill? Are you kidding me? Like, all right, the Hall of Fame is pretty special, and it's got a tremendous legacy of players and coaches and people that have been involved in the game. And so now picture this for a second, Jeff. You got to pick a starting lineup out of the Hall and a head coach. And once their legacy is finalized, the head coach is Bill and the quarterback is Brady. And we can argue about every other position. I have opinions on who the receivers are. I have opinions on who the tackles are, who the defensive backs are. There's no argument relative to, might be a backup Q, might be the assistant head coach that'll help with defense. But that was the team, and that was that was the crash course. How are they? And you know what? Culture, smart players, selflessness, team, all those things. And obviously a fantastic surrounding cast and a great quarterback like we were able to acquire here with Drew. Listen, I'm telling you, if like someone said, hey, this is where you're going to be at after 48 minutes, I'd be like, I'll take it. Because I worry about stumbling when I talk with Mickey or about Mickey. I worried about stumbling when I talk about Drew Brees. Stumbling meaning having to drink this water. And I'm just bringing up 2 examples. But like what personally those 2 people have meant to my career, it's you can't put a price on it. So I don't know that I feel comfortable, but I began to feel more comfortable, I think, after I gave Mrs. Benson the Ted Lasso biscuit.
On that note, but what was this morning, last night, like for you?
Hard. You know how you have something you have to do, and it's like you're not procrastinating it, because quite honestly, it's a little embarrassing in that we're right in the middle of the playoffs, and you don't want to be like we just had a great weekend of football, like unbelievable, and we're getting ready to have another great weekend with the championship games, and so you don't want to be a distraction to that, honestly, and so it's kind of like that. You want it to hurry up and you want to do it. Yeah, you want to do it, and then it's like, all right, how do you do a good job of it, and how do you thank everybody? Like, who am I missing today? I'm sure I'm missing someone, and I apologize. But as a player here, as a coach here, as someone that was a part of our organization, like, it's the building. That's what I'm most proud of. And that's what I'm grateful for.
Did you sleep at all last night, thinking about all of this?
Well, that went back to the irrational behavior with Ambien. I slept okay.
Sean, you've been talking about, the unknown and how you're okay with that, but your identity has been coaching for so long. Were there points in this whole process that you were scared to say?
Well, here's what happens sometimes, Catherine. The game ends. Like, all right, Connor and Megan. Connor was maybe 9 when we won a Super Bowl. Megan, 13. I'm just guessing ages, right? But I have pictures of them on the podium. Connor blowing a bubble and Megan with a broken forearm from cheerleading. And man, life is good to be the child of a coach who's just won the Super Bowl. And then there are these other games where it's been a tough loss. They see you afterwards. They're not tearful, but they're emotional, and they're like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm all right. Like, it's what I do, but it's not who I am. And now they're at an age where they understand that, my daughter, after seeing this over, the period of her young life, decided I'm gonna cover coaches and be a reporter on coaches. And my son, who wants to become in the front office someday, scout, and be a GM someday, said, I'd rather hire and fire the coaches. That's what I'd rather do. And he's awfully smart. And so, yeah.
Sean, what's your advice for the next head coach of the Saints, particularly, and then particularly for a community like this where it's almost like college atmosphere crazy what I'm seeing?
I think there's 2 or 3 cities. So, Larry asked a question like, all right, head coaching advice. You have to be yourself. The best advice I ever got, and it was in a book, my head coach in high school, this gets back to being touched by the right people and you don't even know it's happening. But you know, as a parent, the greatest gift you can ever receive is when someone, teacher, music teacher, professor, anyone of influence, loves your child for a short period of time, every bit as you love them. That's pretty powerful. Like when someone makes an impact with your child, and my high school coach did, and it wasn't always perfect, but he had in the cover of his book, just be fair. It's much easier to be fair than trying to appear to be fair. You know how much trouble like you get into when you're trying to appear something, and so that was pretty good. Relative to the fan base, just sink it in and take it in, and it's a great football fan base. There might be 2 or 3 others in the world like it, similar to it. And man, how fortunate, like for me at a young age to happen on a head coaching position with it. 05 season, 06, like right after. And look, some things, like we got off to a decent start in 06. Tough game at Cleveland. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember the song playing on the field pregame, and it was a country song about Sundays or something. I can remember Green Bay is when the first time I thought Drew's arm's going to be okay, and I kept yelling at Pete before then, like, is this it? And Drew knows this story. It's like, because Pete had the reference as to what it was when it was fully recovered. But he made a pass to Colston on a pylon for a touchdown. We came back, we were down 13, we won that game. Atlanta week 3, and then all of a sudden, like anything else, you guys have heard me say this, confidence like can develop, but it's from demonstrated behavior, and that's what you're watching right now when you watch San Francisco play. Like it's evolving, and they're the team that Tampa was a year ago, and that's powerful in sport.
Sean, what was the key just to maintaining the relationships as long as you go with guys like Pete, Mickey, Drew, and just that competitive atmosphere? What do you do to get a lot of people?
Yeah, I think that's an easy question. I think anytime you're discussing relationships, it's the willingness that both parties have in making sure it's strong. And I think relative to Drew being the quarterback for that long, or Mickey and I, or Pete, or any coach, it's the common goal of, like, number one, we like each other, but also we each want to, we're each pushing for the same success. And so those like-minded goals are positive. And I think they help that. Mickey, Gail, and Dennis. That's it. I mean, because I didn't talk with anyone. Like, you know, Mickey, then down the hall to Gail, and then down the hall to Dennis in that order. And then Dennis again, and Mickey and Gail. No, look, I spent a week confirming what I believed, and that was smart. But I wouldn't say, man, we finished the Atlanta game, beating Atlanta, and in the locker room watching the end of that game in overtime, that it was like, well, this is it. Like, I wasn't saving programs or I think it was something a little bit more I thought it could be it. This might be it, and if this is it, and you beat Atlanta one more time, that's pretty cool.
How did you organize your thoughts when you were trying to come to this decision?
I don't know that you have to organize your thoughts. Arriving at the decision is more than just give thought to, all right, why? Like, in other words, how do you see this next year unfolding? There's like a lot of things. You put a list together, things that you want to do, like simple things, and then a list of more complex things, and then a list of like what you'd like to do. And you weigh it against, I mean, and this is important, I think, because there have been mixed. I've got 3 more years under contract here. So I've just completed year 2 of a 5-year deal, and it certainly wasn't about compensation, money, or any of that. Because of that, I'm able to make a decision, where there's uncertainty, and yet, it's a decision you couldn't make when you were younger because you had to work. That's all.
How much do you think you elevated kind of the Saints brand to go on the national stage?
How much? Well, I think, when you win, this is always funny. I always like argue with the marketing people. I think you got to win, but you can market, and marketing's extremely important. But man, the view never changes when you're on top. And in that part, the importance of having success, and that's how we're measured. In a highly competitive field, it's extremely important. And you work 3 years for a Hall of Fame coach like Parcells. Man, you learn so much. You learn so much. And prior to that, you work for the New York Giant organization, go to a Super Bowl, playoffs, you learn a lot. The Mara family, Tisch family, all those people that were instrumental in my early growth. Philadelphia, the Lurie family, and my first job, getting hired by Gruden and Ray Rhodes and those guys. And here's the staff. You ready? 97, 98. John Harbaugh, myself, David Shaw, Gruden, Juan Castillo, line coach, Vitt, coach forever, Emmett Thomas, Hall of Fame player, great coach, Mike Turgevac. I'm going to keep going. Bill Callahan, former head coach. Like, there were all of us just working and to later then see the success and to be just a small, like when I say, man, get coffee, cut up tape, but be able to be a part of stuff like that, it's not till later that you were like, man, I was fortunate. I was fortunate.
You've been at the NFL game for like 25 years now. Is there ever anything that you always wanted to do in the fall you've never been able to do?
Anything that in regards to?
Well, like, anything that you're never able to do, like, you're never able to go to Jazz Fest.
Yeah. All right. What do you miss? Thanksgivings are always good. We play on Thanksgiving. It's not difficult. Christmas is hard. And I don't know. Outside of that, I thought Jazz Fest was like late summer. Oh, so yeah, Jazz Fest is not. impossible. We haven't had it in a while, right? The biggest thing is the stuff you miss with your families and your children. And, you know, they're older now, but they open up a gift and I'm like, do you like it? And you're like, yeah, but I know mom bought it, you know. I mean, it's hard. Some of those things are hard, but I think that's the case with any job. There's certain pros and certain cons, you know, and so whether it's a night job, whether it's a day job, whether it's weekends, whether you're in the military, yeah. But I'm sure there'll be things. I haven't gone to a tailgate ever. And I go by one like every day on the way to the Superdome with the way I come in under the duct. I see them and I'm like, they're having more fun than me right now. I'd make a left and a right and go through the stadium parking, head in, and then it's always tough getting out, you know, leaving. But those people aren't worried about third down. Jenny's will still be possible. I promise the tradition. What's the best way to say it? For the near and coming future. So we do a thing here. I say we. Jenny's ice cream's been great, and you know how Christmas gifts after a while, the turkeys, the hams, whatever it is. But I think that's one like little tradition. I was late this year. I'm sorry, and I guarantee you I didn't probably hit everyone. I always like, you know, make sure Greg, Doug, we check this list. Is there anyone we're missing? But for the challenge this year, scheduling wise, was unique anyway. So that'll be ongoing.
The way some of the facilities look and the image that they project has changed quite a bit since you've been here. I just wondering if you could touch briefly on the influence that you had on that and what your goals were in that regard.
Yeah. So how have things changed facility wise? This indoor was a great facility for us. We've changed how it looks. You know, we're fortunate right down the road to have crystal clear imaging, and you can pretty much take a picture and within, you know, 2 days blow it up and have it here. The banners, those have changed. There's a lot more of them. Weight rooms completely different. Meeting rooms, the interior design. When I was suspended, there was a remodel of the building, and Mrs. B was real smart to take advantage of that. And so I had like an old deer head, and I never hunted before, and an alligator. I had all these things that sat in the office of like the stereotypical coach that you remember on TV. And when I came back, the building had been remodeled, and there was like an oriental carpet that's still in there. Pictures were like to the T, and I appreciate that. And so much has changed, and every year it's changing. We always feel like, or felt like, we wanted the players to come back to a look that was necessary, but also different. You know, a new training room, which was remarkable, a big deal. The locker room, cafeteria here in the future, the meeting rooms that are getting redone now. It's always improving, moving forward, not necessarily for recruiting, but really more so for functionality and being, you know, do we need it? All right. And then what is it we need? And then let's do it. And back to Dennis, Mrs. B, Mickey, and everyone that's a part of that. And it's important that it starts with, do we need it? How's it going to benefit us? Good.